Hello friends, Hal here. Today we're going to talk about the circle of fifths in music theory, and we'll start in just a minute. So the first thing we want to do is talk about the circle of fifths. A fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I start on the first note of a scale, here's the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G. C would be the first note, G would be the fifth note, and if we play those together, that's a fifth. We call that a perfect fifth. We're going to talk about intervals in depth next week, but I just wanted to let you know what that is. Okay, a fifth, because we're going to talk about the circle of fifths today, and we have to know what a fifth is. So from G, A, B, C, D, that's 5 notes. So G to D would be a perfect fifth. C to G would be a perfect fifth. Let's start with the key of C. It has no sharps or flats. On the C note, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, just like that. That's a C major scale. And then what we do, now let's talk about the first 4 notes of a scale. That's called a tetrachord. It's called the lower tetrachord of the scale. And the upper 4 notes of the scale is called the upper tetrachord. So we have a lower tetrachord and an upper tetrachord. Usually you think of a chord as being notes that you play together that sound good. I'm not sure why these are called tetrachords. Tetra meaning 4, chord, I mean, I don't know. It's not like a regular chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The first 4 notes, the first 4 notes in the bottom of that scale is called the lower tetrachord. The upper 4 notes is called the upper tetrachord. And so from C to G is called a perfect fifth. If we play it like this, it sounds like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Okay? Now the next scale, which is G, and we're talking about the G major scale, the first 4 notes of that scale is just like the last 4 notes of the C major scale. So they are inharmonic. Now what's interesting about this is that the C major scale has no sharps and flats. We go up a perfect fifth, and then that scale has 1 sharp. Let's go down an octave here. And now if we go from G to D, which is another perfect fifth, and we play the D major scale, it has 2 sharps. So what we're doing is we're going up a perfect fifth every time, and we play the C major scale, the G major scale, the D major scale, and we find that we go from 0 sharps and flats to 1 sharp to 2 sharps. And then if we go up again from D to A, we have 3 sharps. If we go from A to E, that's 4 sharps. If we go from E to B, we have 5 sharps. If we go from B to F sharp, that's 6 sharps, and if we go from F sharp to C sharp, that's 7 sharps. Now what's interesting about the circle of fifths is if we go down a fifth, then we go from C to F, and the F major scale has 1 flat, and then if we go down from F to B flat has 2 flats. If we go from B flat to E flat has 3 flats. If we go from E flat to A flat has 4 flats. Let's go down here. If we go from A flat to D flat, down, D flat has 5 flats. If we go from D flat to G flat, G flat has 6 flats. If we go from G flat to what we call C flat, then that has 7 flats. And C flat is essentially B major. It's the same scale, except we would call this C flat, D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, B flat, back to C flat. But really, when you look at it on the keyboard, it looks like B, that looks like E, and so I think of it as being B major. It's easier for me to think of that as B major than it is to think of it as C flat. So now we've gone through all the different keys on the circle of fifths, and let me show you my book right here. And you'll notice that I have things written on it, and that's when I was studying that. And those things written in pen are really about the minor keys, because every major key has a minor relative. For instance, C major, the relative minor of C major is A minor. Okay, I guess I could start on a different note and play that. One of the ways to think about that is C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6th note of the scale is the relative minor. Okay, so if you use the same notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, then we get the relative minor, which is actually the natural minor. And a natural minor scale is the same as a C major scale, except it starts on A and goes to A. And our half steps are between 2 and 3. Let's see if I can find it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 5 and 6, 7, 8. So that's the natural minor scale. You can play a song in natural minor and it sounds really beautiful. It sounds very period-like, meaning that's sort of medieval sounding, wouldn't you say? Okay. There's another minor scale called the harmonic minor. Let's play that a little higher so you can hear that a little differently. Okay, it's that that little section right there. Okay, we go from let's see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A, and so F to G sharp is actually what we call a step and a half, which is 3 frets on the guitar if you go straight up. And it has a distinct sound to it. It sounds like Aladdin, that kind of thing. Or it can sound really quite Jewish, because Jewish music, what would you call that? It has a distinct sound. Now, there's another minor scale, which is called the melodic minor scale. What happens is that we raise the 6th note of the scale and the 7th note of the scale to be just like a major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is a raised note, 7, which is a raised note, and then back to A again. Now, when we go down the scale, then what we do is we lower those tones again, lower 6, lowered 7. So going up, you raise the 6th and the 7th tones. Going down, you lower them again. That's what makes melodic minor so interesting. Now, we will talk in a couple of weeks about chords and why raising those tones is so important to the major scale, to the minor scale, to the harmonic minor scale, and to the melodic minor scale. In a natural minor scale, if you play something just in natural minor, you don't raise any tones and it stays just with those 8 or those 7 different tones. And it gives a distinct sound that way, a very modal sound. So what we've really said is that every major scale has a relative minor. And the reason we call it relatives is because they're related, which means that they have the same key signature. For instance, G major has 1 sharp and E minor has 1 sharp. And they're the same tones, except you start on a different note. When you start on G major, you start on G. It is your home note. It is what we call your tonic. When you start on E minor, you start on E, and it becomes your home note. It is your tonic. So it just depends on what scale you want to play and where you want to start. Parallel minor, if someone talks about a parallel minor key, what they're talking about is, here's the C major scale and the C natural minor. And here's the C harmonic minor. And the C melodic minor. There's one more scale that we can talk about, and that's the chromatic scale. The chromatic scale is basically when you take one note, and then you go to the next half step, and the next half step, and the next half step. Okay, and there's 12 tones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then we get back to where we started, which is, in this case, a C. So that's a chromatic scale. Okay, sometimes we do a chromatic exercise, which is not a scale because we actually skip right there. We skip from that note to that note, which is actually skipping over a note. It's not a chromatic scale. If we want to do a chromatic scale, we have to actually slide up like that. So that's a chromatic scale. Now, sometimes we'll have chromatic alterations in music where we just raise something or lower something a half step, which is 1 fret on the guitar. So let's see if we can get used to these words: chromatic alterations, chromatic scale. These other scales that we were talking about, the C major scale, it's a diatonic scale. A minor, that's a diatonic scale. A harmonic minor, that's a diatonic scale. A melodic minor, that's a diatonic scale. Chromatic scale. Okay, so there you go. That's a little bit about scales. We will be talking more in depth about scales and how they work and how you use them. But that's just an overview. And don't forget to pick up the sheet in the description, which is a very valuable sheet. You need to get it. And it shows you all the notes to all the scales. And I'll even throw in the minor scale sheet, since we did talk about minor scales this week. These are all natural minor scales, so they correlate with the major scales. I didn't put the harmonic or the melodic minors in there. We can talk about that later, or you can figure them out. All right, thank you for coming along. We'll talk to you later. Take care.